The screaming started at 03 for 7 hours. Commander Kellen Voss jerked awake in his bunk aboard the research vessel Harbinger's Edge. The sound climbed through the ship's hull like nails on metal. In 37 years of deep space exploration, he'd never heard anything like it, a sound that bypassed the ears and struck directly at the brainstem, triggering every primal terror humanity had evolved to recognize. Bridge to all stations. Crackled the intercom. Code 7 emergency. All senior staff report immediately. Voss pulled on his uniform, muscle memory guiding him through the motions while his mind processed the implications. Code 7 made contact with unknown intelligence. They were 14 light-years from Earth, investigating the ruins of what appeared to be a vast alien civilization on the planet designated Kepler 442c. What they'd found instead was something that defied classification. The bridge buzzed with controlled chaos. Dr. Naya Okafor, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist, stood hunched over her console, her dark skin pale with exhaustion and fear. "Commander, we've lost contact with Survey Team Delta. Their last transmission." She paused, her hands trembling as she worked the controls. "Play it," Voss ordered. The speakers crackled to life, filled with static and something else whispers. In a language that predated human speech, words that seemed to crawl inside the listeners' skulls. Then came the voice of Dr. Marcus Raynard, Delta Team's leader, but wrong somehow, pitched to high and speaking in rhythms that human vocal cords weren't designed to produce. The vessels are perfect. We can taste the fire in their blood, feel the chaos in their thoughts, such beautiful madness, such glorious pain." The transmission cut to screaming again. Multiple voices layered over each other in harmonics that made the bridge crew physically recoil. "When did this start?" Voss demanded. 47 minutes ago. They were investigating the central spire complex when Okafor's words were cut off by another burst of static from the surface. Chief Science Officer Dr. Emil Graves stepped forward, his weathered face grim. "Commander, I've been analyzing the structures down there. They're not ruins, they're prisons. The entire complex is designed to contain something, and the containment fields are failing." "What kind of something?" "Based on the energy signatures and the archaeological evidence, I believe we're dealing with entities that exist primarily as information, pure consciousness, without physical form. The locals called them the Murthaki in the inscriptions we've translated, the soul devourers." Voss felt his blood chill, "and our people walked right into their prison." "Worse than that, sir. The prison wasn't built to keep them in, it was built to keep them from getting out. The civilization that built this place sacrificed themselves to contain the Murthaki, and we just gave them exactly what they needed to escape." Another transmission burst through the comm system, this time from Survey Team Charlie. Lieutenant Yuki Nakamura's voice came through, but like Raynard's, it carried harmonics that no human throat should produce. "The barriers grow thin, so thin. We can feel the void between stars, calling to us. Your kind burns so bright, so brief, perfect kindling for eternal fire." The lights on the bridge flickered, and for a moment, Voss can swear he saw shadows moving independently of their sources, reaching across the walls like grasping fingers. "All teams, immediate evacuation order." He barked into his communicator. "Return to ship immediately," but even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. The responses that came back weren't from his people anymore. They were from things wearing his people's voices like ill-fitting masks, speaking words of invitation and promise. That made his skin crawl. "Sir," Okafor whispered, pointing at her. "Readings. I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the complex. Whatever's happening down there, it's spreading through the viewports." The alien city began to glow with an unhealthy phosphorescence, and Voss realized with growing horror that humanity had just encountered something that viewed their souls not as sacred, but as territory to be conquered. The hunt had begun. The first possessed crew member materialized in the ship's cargo bay. At 0 hours. It had been Dr. Marcus Raynard, once Voss could tell by the distinctive scar along the left temple from a climbing accident years ago. But the thing that stepped through the emergency airlock moved wrong, joints bending at impossible angles, and when it smiled, the expression stretched to wide, revealing teeth that gleamed with an inner light. "Hello, Commander," it said in Raynard's voice, though harmonics underneath suggested a chorus speaking in unison. "We've come to extend an invitation." Security Chief Torrin Blackthorn, a bear of a man with cybernetic arms, leveled his plasma rifle. "Stand down, Doc. Whatever's got hold of you, we can." The thing that were Raynard's face tilted its head with mechanical precision. Such interesting constructs you built, it purred, examining Blackthorn's prosthetics with predatory interest. Metal and flesh, bound by crude electrical impulses, we could show you such elegant solutions. It moved faster than human reflexes should allow. One moment it stood 15 feet away, the next, its hand was wrapped around Blackthorn's throat, lifting the 200-pound man off his feet like he weighed nothing. Fire, Voss shouted. Plasma bolts seared the air, but the entity wearing Raynard's body twisted with liquid grace. Using Blackthorn as a shield, the security chief's armor absorbed most of the impact, but the smell of burning flesh filled the cargo bay. Your weapons wound the vessel, not us, the entity laughed, its voice shifting through octaves. But we feel its pain, such exquisite agony. Is this what you call living? Blackthorn's cybernetic arms sparked to life, servo motors whining as they clamped around the entity's wrist. For a moment, man and monster were locked in a contest of strength, but the thing wearing Raynard's face only smiled wider. Artificial strength. It whispered, we can work with that. Black veins spread from where its hand touched Blackthorn's throat. Racing across his skin like spilled ink, the security chief's eyes rolled back, showing white, and when he looked at Voss again, they held the same phosphorescent glow as his. Captors, 2 vessels. Both creatures said in perfect unison, how economical. Dr. Graves appeared at Voss's shoulder, carrying a modified sonic disruptor. Commander, get clear. The weapon discharged with a bone-deep thrum that shattered storage containers. It sent both possessed crew members staggering. For a moment, the black veins under their skin flickered, and Voss heard Blackthorn's real voice break through. Sir, can't control. Then the entities reasserted dominance, and both men straightened with mechanical precision. Crude but effective, they acknowledged. Your Dr. Graves shows promise. We look forward to examining his mind more intimately. The lights went out. Emergency. Illumination kicked in, bathing the cargo bay in hellish red. In the strobing light, Voss could see more figures moving in the shadows. Crew members, who should have been safely aboard the ship, but whose eyes now glowed with alien intelligence. How many? He whispered. Initial surface teams, 12 souls. But we are not limited by flesh. The Raynard thing replied. Your communication networks are so accommodating. Every transmission, every data packet, a pathway. On cue. The ship's intercom crackled to life with the voice of Communications Officer Petra Holst. All crew report to designated assembly points for mandatory consciousness integration. Resistance will be processed. Voss backed toward the emergency bulkhead, Graves beside him. Doc, tell me you've got a plan. Working on it. Graves muttered, his fingers flying over a portable scanner. The entities appear to be electromagnetic in nature, pure information given form. If I can disrupt their quantum coherence, in layman's terms, I need to find a way to delete them. The possessed crew members began advancing in perfect synchronization, their movements to fluid, to coordinated. Behind them, more shadows detached from the walls. Crew members who'd never left the ship, taken through some means Voss couldn't comprehend. Commander, Graves whispered urgently, I'm reading massive energy spikes throughout the ship. They're not just possessing individuals, they're trying to take the entire vessel. If they succeed, Voss understood, a deep space exploration ship carried enough firepower to level a small city. In the wrong hands or minds, it could become a weapon of mass destruction. As if reading his thoughts, the Raynard dandy smiled. Its too-wide smile. Your concerns are premature. Commander, we have no interest in destruction. We seek expansion. Your species shows such potential for hosting our consciousness. Every human soul a new room in our eternal palace. Behind them, the emergency bulkhead began to buckle as something massive struck it from the other side. Voss caught a glimpse of Chief Engineer Dolores Santos, her maintenance exoskeleton sparking with alien energy, her face a mask of serene malevolence. The war for human souls had begun, and they were losing. The command deck had become a fortress under siege. Voss crouched behind an overturned tactical console, watching the sealed blast doors flex and groan under repeated impacts. On the other side, 23 possessed crew members, nearly half the ship's complement, coordinated their assault with inhuman precision. Their voices echoed through the ventilation system in harmonic patterns that made his teeth ache. Structural integrity at 60%, reported. Dr. Graves hunched over a jury-rigged scanner. They're using our own people as battering rams, Commander. Santos is literally trying to punch through reinforced uranium with her bare hands. Through the security feeds, still under their control, Voss watched the horror unfold throughout his ship. The possessed moved like a hive mind, their actions synchronized down to the heartbeat. They disabled life support to sections where uncompromised crew members had taken refuge, methodically forcing his people into smaller and smaller safe zones. "Sir," whispered Ensign Derek Matsuda, one of only 7 crew members still fighting the invasion. "They're accessing the ship's database. All personnel files, psychological profiles, even our personal logs." Voss felt his blood chill. The entities weren't just collecting bodies, they were studying their prey, learning human weaknesses and fears with the thoroughness of a military intelligence operation. The intercom crackled with Dr. Okafor's voice, though the words came out in impossible harmonics. "Commander Voss, your resistance serves no purpose. We have examined your service record, your psychological evaluation, your deepest fears, claustrophobia, fear of losing control, survivor's guilt from the Titan Station disaster. Such rich emotional texture to work with." Voss's hands trembled as memories he'd buried for 15 years clawed their way to the surface. Titan Station 300 souls lost because he'd given the evacuation order 30 seconds too late. The screams, the failure, the weight of command crushing down like, "Don't listen," Graves snapped, grabbing his shoulder. "They're using psychological warfare. Classic interrogation technique amplified by alien intelligence." But it was too late. The possessed had found their frequency, and every speaker on the command deck erupted with a cacophony of voices. His dead crew from Titan Station, calling his name, asking why he'd left them behind. Ensign Matsuda broke. First, he stood up from cover, tears streaming down his face, and walked toward the bulkhead. "I can hear my sister," he whispered. "She's been calling for help." "Derek, no." Voss lunged for him, but the young man had already placed his palm against the door's access panel. The locks disengaged with a soft chime. The possessed poured through like a black tide. Chief Santos led the charge, her exoskeleton crackling with stolen power. Behind her came Blackthorn, Reynolds, Holst, and a dozen other friends, colleagues. People Voss had served with for years, now wearing their faces like masks while alien intelligence burned behind their eyes. Finally, they said, in unison, "We can begin the real work." Dr. Graves raised his sonic disruptor, but Santos moved with mechanical precision, her power fist shattering the device before he could fire. The scientist went down hard, blood streaming from his temple. Voss drew his sidearm, knowing it was useless. Plasma bolts had barely slowed them before. Now, with the ship's power grid under their control, they could simply absorb the energy and convert it to their own purposes. Such dedication. The Raynor thing observed, tilting its head. As Voss took aim, "You would die for these people. How beautifully human. We will preserve that loyalty when we take you. Your devotion will serve us well. Go to hell." Voss fired, the plasma bolt taking the creature's center mass. For a moment, Raynard's body convulsed, and he could see his friend's real consciousness, surface eyes wide with terror, mouth forming a silent plea for death. Then the entity reasserted control, and the wound sealed itself with liquid darkness. "Your friend is still in here," it whispered. He screamed so prettily. "Would you like to hear?" The sound that emerged from Raynard's throat was purely human, a shriek of absolute agony that drove Voss to his knees. Around him, the other possessed crew members began to laugh, the sound harmonizing into frequencies that made reality itself seem to bend. That's when the ship's emergency AI activated. "Biological contamination detected," announced Aria's synthetic voice, initiating quarantine protocols. The command deck's atmosphere processors roared to life, flooding the compartment with knockout gas. But the possessed didn't need to breathe like humans. They stood unaffected while Voss and the remaining loyal crew members began to collapse. As consciousness faded, Voss heard the entities discussing their plans in clinical terms. They would use the ship to reach Earth, spreading their influence through humanity's communication networks. Every smartphone, every computer terminal, every neural implant would become a gateway for possession. Humanity's interconnected civilization. Their greatest strength would become the instrument of their extinction. The last thing Voss saw before darkness took him was Dr. Graves, broken and bleeding, managing to input one final command into his scanner. A message pulse, compressed and encrypted, shot toward Earth at faster than light speeds. A warning, a desperate hope. But it would take the signal 3 months to reach home, and Voss knew they had perhaps 3 hours before the entities finished studying their vessel and began the journey to humanity's birth world. The invasion of Earth had already begun. Consciousness returned like broken glass, sharp, fragmented, and painful. Voss found himself strapped to a medical chair in the ship's infirmary, surrounded by the possessed crew, but something had changed. Where before they moved within human coordination, now their actions seemed labored, uncertain. Dr. Graves sat in a similar chair across from him, awake but barely conscious. Blood crusted around his temples where neural probes had been inserted. When he met Voss's eyes, the scientist managed a weak smile. "Commander," he whispered, I think we broke them." The thing wearing Dr. Okafor's form leaned forward, and Voss could see stress fractures spreading across its borrowed features like cracking porcelain. "Your species," it said, struggling with each word, "is problematic, having second thoughts." About the invasion, Voss tested his restraints military grade, but the lock showed signs of hasty installation, sloppy work. "We have inhabited 10,000 worlds," the entity continued, its voice fracturing into harmonics, "absorbed countless civilizations. But your kind, your consciousness fights us, even in death. Your memories resist integration." Through the infirmary's observation window, Voss could see other possessed crew members exhibiting similar symptoms. Chief Santos repeatedly smashed her augmented fist against a bulkhead, each impact accompanied by a very human scream of rage. Lieutenant Nakamura stood motionless in a corridor, tears streaming down her face while her mouth moved in what looked like argument with an invisible opponent. "We tried to process your Dr. Raynard's memories," the Okafor thing admitted, its borrowed form shuddering. "His consciousness, it laughed at us. Even as we consumed his thoughts, he was analyzing our structure, understanding our weaknesses. Your minds are not vessels to be filled, they are adversaries to be conquered." Graves coughed, specks of blood hitting his chin. "Human consciousness isn't just information storage. It's a processing system evolved for survival. Every human brain is essentially a supercomputer designed for warfare." The admission seemed to cost the entity significant effort. When it spoke again, multiple voices layered underneath its words, the real crew members, fighting for control. "Worse, we attempted to access your racial memory through the possessed subjects. Your species' history of conflict, innovation born from desperation. We underestimated the martial nature of human consciousness." Voss felt a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Let me guess, you tried to download our military databases and got more than you bargained for." The entity's borrowed face contorted with something resembling pain. "Your art of war, your tactical manuals, your strategic doctrine, but deeper than that, genetic memory of 10,000 years of warfare. Every human carries the accumulated combat experience of their entire species. We sought to control you and instead absorb the concentrated violence of human history." Around them, the ship's systems flickered and groaned through the security feeds. Voss could see the possessed crew members becoming increasingly erratic. Some had collapsed entirely, their borrowed bodies convulsing as human and alien consciousness waged war. In the same neural space, the neural feedback is destroying both host and parasite, Graves observed clinically. "They can't maintain coherent control, but we can still complete our mission." The Okafor entity snarled, though its voice carried desperate undertones. "Your Earth holds 8 billion minds. Even if we can only successfully possess a fraction." The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, revealing chaos throughout the ship. Half the possessed crew had collapsed completely, their bodies twitching as consciousness ping-ponged between human and alien control. The others moved with jerky, uncoordinated motions, like marionettes operated by drunk puppeteers. In the confusion, Voss noticed his restraints had unlocked, probably a side effect of the entities degrading control over ship systems. He freed himself quickly, then moved to release Graves. "Doc, can you move?" "The fine move," Graves mumbled, but he managed to stand. "Commander, I've been monitoring their neural patterns during the interrogation. The entities exist as pure information, but they need stable quantum frameworks to maintain coherence. Human consciousness doesn't provide that. It's too chaotic, too aggressive." They made their way to the armory, stepping over the convulsing forms of possessed crew members. Inside, Voss armed himself with a heavy plasma rifle while Graves gathered electronic components. "What's the plan?" Voss asked. "The entities are essentially complex computer viruses that achieve sentience, but they're running on incompatible hardware. Now human brains evolved for creative problem solving, not passive data storage. If I can introduce additional chaotic variables into their quantum matrices." English. "Doc," Graves held up a modified neural disruptor. We're going to give them a migraine they'll never forget. But as they prepared to leave the armory, the ship's intercom crackled with a new voice, multiple voices, actually. Layered in impossible harmonies, all the possessed crew were speaking in unison, their combined consciousness creating something far more dangerous than the sum of its parts. Enough, they roared, the word carrying enough psychic force to crack viewing ports throughout the ship. We may not be able to fully control your kind, but we can still destroy your world. The ship's weapon systems remain under our influence. We will sterilize Earth's surface and pick through the ashes for more compatible minds. Through the ship's external cameras, Voss can see the planet below Kepler for to see, where this nightmare had begun, but now the alien city was completely dark, its inhabitants long dead. The only lights came from the orbital bombardment array now turning toward Earth's coordinates. The entities couldn't possess humanity, so they decided to exterminate it instead. The real war was about to begin. The Harbinger's edge shuddered as its orbital bombardment cannons powered up, massive capacitors drawing energy from the ship's fusion reactor. Through the tactical display, Voss watched targeting solutions for major Earth cities cascade across the screen. New York, London, Beijing, Mumbai. 8 billion lives reduced to crosshairs and firing solutions. Graves, how long do we have? The scientist's fingers flew over his modified scanner, sweat beading on his forehead. 47 minutes to full charge. After that, he didn't need to finish. The ship's arsenal could crack continents. Around them, the Harbinger's edge had become a war zone. The partially possessed crew members moved through the corridors like broken dolls, their actions dictated by the collective entity's will, but hampered by human consciousness fighting for control. The result was a ship full of twitching, screaming semi-humans caught between two incompatible forms of awareness. Voss keyed his comlink to the few remaining uncompromised crew members. All hands, this is the commander. We're going to retake the ship section by section. Target the possessed, but remember our people are still in there. The response came back fractured. Desperate, sir. This is Peterson in engineering. They've got thermal charges set throughout the reactor compartment. If we move against them, they'll detonate the ship. Voss finished. The entities were learning human tactics if they couldn't have Earth. They denied to humanity through nuclear fire. Dr. Graves looked up from his work. Commander, I might have a solution, but it's going to require getting very close to the primary control matrix. Where? The bridge. They've centralized their consciousness there to manage the bombardment calculations. If I can introduce my viral code directly into their quantum framework, it'll be a slaughter. Half the possessed crew are concentrated up there. Then we'd better bring everything we've got. The assault began at Section 7, near the ship's armory. Voss led a team of 6 survivors, all that remained of the 40-person crew, armed with plasma rifles and sonic disruptors. Their objective was simple: fight their way through 15 decks of ship controlled by entities wearing their friends' faces. The first contact came at Corridor Junction 7 Alpha. Chief Santos rounded the corner, her maintenance exoskeleton crackling with stolen power, hydraulics whining as she moved. But her approach was erratic, stumbling, as human muscle memory fought alien control. Chief, Voss called out, I know you're in there. Fight it. Santos' face contorted, and for a moment, he saw the real woman underneath, terrified, pleading. Then the entity reasserted control, and she charged. Voss opened fire, his plasma bolt striking center mass, but the exoskeleton's armor absorbed most of the impact. Santos' augmented fist swept toward his head, and he rolled aside as it punched through the bulkhead where he'd been standing. Her left servo coupling, shouted Petty Officer Keating. It's damaged. Voss saw a hairline crack in the exoskeleton's knee joint, probably from the entity's clumsy control. He aimed carefully and fired, the plasma bolt severing the connection. Santos toppled, her exoskeleton locked in place, but her human arms were still free, clawing at him with inhuman strength. Graves stepped forward with his sonic disruptor. The weapon discharged, and for a moment, the black veins under Santos' skin flickered. She screamed a purely human sound of agony and terror. Dolores, Voss grabbed her shoulders. Can you hear me, Commander? Her voice was barely a whisper. It's like drowning in someone else's thoughts. They know everything, our weaknesses, our fears. Then her eyes rolled back, glowing with phosphorescent light, and she was gone again. They fought their way through Section 6, leaving 3 possessed crew members unconscious, but alive. Graves had managed to modify his sonic disruptor to temporarily disrupt the entity's control, But the victories came at a cost. Ensign Peterson took a plasma bolt to the shoulder when they encountered Lieutenant Nakamura. Keating went down hard when the possessed Dr. Rayner demonstrated that human bones could bend in very inhuman directions when properly motivated. By the time they reached Section 3, they had lost 2 more team members, and Voss realized the entities were learning from each encounter. The possessed crew's movements became more coordinated, their tactics more sophisticated. They're adapting, Graves observed, treating a burn on his arm each time we engage. They download more combat data from their host's memories. The final push to the bridge began at 2,130 hours. 11 possessed crew members waited in the corridor, leading to command more than half the entity's remaining forces. They stood in perfect formation, their borrowed faces blank, weapons drawn. Remember, Voss told his remaining team, our people are still in there. We're not killing crew members, we're performing exorcisms. The hallway erupted in plasma fire and sonic disruption waves. The possessed moved with inhuman coordination, but human reflexes and creativity hampered their execution. Voss watched Lieutenant Matsuda aim a rifle at him with mechanical precision, only to stumble when human muscle memory tried to correct for a recoil pattern. The entity didn't understand. Graves' modified sonic disruptors did their work, sending possessed crew members convulsing to the deck, but the entities adapted quickly, learning to isolate their consciousness from the disruption frequencies. What had worked in the first encounter was only partially effective now. The battle became brutal, close-quarters combat. Voss found himself grappling with Communications Officer Holst, her augmented reflexes artificially enhanced by alien control. She was faster, stronger, more precise, but she fought like a machine, without creativity or intuition. When she lunged for his throat, Voss did something no tactical manual would recommend. He threw himself backward into a bulkhead, using her momentum to drive her skull into the reinforced duranium. The impact stunned both human and alien consciousness, giving him the opening he needed to apply Graves' neural disruptor directly to her temple. By the time they reached the bridge, only Voss and Graves remained standing. Behind them lay 11 crew members, unconscious but alive, the alien influence temporarily severed. The blast doors to the bridge stood open, as if inviting them in. Beyond, Voss could see the remaining possessed crew arranged around the command stations, their eyes glowing with coordinated intelligence. At the center sat Dr. Okafor, neural interface cables snaking from her skull to the ship's primary computer core. Welcome, Commander, she said without turning around. You arrived just in time to witness the cleansing of your species. On the main screen, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, unaware that its extinction approached at the speed of light. The bridge of the Harbinger's Edge had been transformed into something resembling a neural nexus. Dr. Okafor sat at the center, her skull open like a flower, alien circuitry interfacing directly with her brain tissue. Around her, the remaining possessed crew members stood at their stations. Their consciousness merged into a collective intelligence that pulsed with malevolent purpose. Bombardment sequence at 92%, reported the thing-wearing chief. Blackthorn's body, though his voice harmonized with 6 others. Earth's major population centers have been prioritized. Estimated casualties, 7.4 billion humans in the first wave. Voss raised his plasma rifle, but Dr. Graves grabbed his arm. Wait, look at the neural feedback patterns on the medical scanner. Voss could see the readouts from the possessed crew. The alien entity's quantum signatures were fluctuating wildly, their coherence degrading with each passing moment. Whatever was happening, the strain of maintaining collective control was taking its toll. Your Dr. Okafor proves. Challenging, the collective entity admitted, its borrowed voice is showing signs of strain. Her consciousness resists integration more effectively than anticipated. The archaeologist's mind contains too many conceptual frameworks, abstract thinking, patterns we cannot fully process. That's when Voss understood. You can possess bodies, even minds, but you can't handle human creativity, our ability to think in metaphors, to imagine things that don't exist. It's corrupting your data. The Okafor thing turned toward them, and Voss could see the real Dr. Okafor fighting behind her eyes, using every academic discipline she'd ever studied as a weapon against the invading consciousness. She floods us with irrelevant data, the entity snarled, ancient poetry, theoretical mathematics, speculative archaeology, noise that interferes with our core processes, not noise. Graves whispered, understanding dawning on his face. Signal. She's found their weakness. He activated his modified neural disruptor, but instead of using it as a weapon, he connected it to the ship's communication array. "Commander, I need you to buy me 60 seconds. What are you doing?" Dr. Okafor isn't just resisting, she's been analyzing their structure from the inside. "If I can amplify her findings and broadcast them to every possessed crew member simultaneously," the collective entity realized the threat. All 6 possessed crew members on the bridge turned toward Graves with mechanical precision. Their movements perfectly synchronized despite their deteriorating motor control. Voss opened fire, his plasma rifle stitching bolts across the bridge. The possessed crew scattered for cover, but their movements were too coordinated, too predictable. Human unpredictability was their weakness, and Voss had spent 37 years learning to be unpredictable. When Lieutenant Holst tried to flank him from the port side, Voss tossed his rifle aside and drew his sidearm, firing blind over his shoulder while diving behind the navigation console. The shot took her in the shoulder, spinning her round. 40 seconds, Graves called out, his fingers flying over the modified equipment. Chief Santos emerged from behind the tactical station, her movements jerky and uncontrolled. The exoskeleton had been damaged in their earlier encounter, but human engineering was adaptive. She jury-rigged the hydraulics to work in spite of the damage. Voss rolled aside as her augmented fist shattered the deck plating, then grabbed an emergency fire suppression canister and triggered it directly into her face. The chemical foam blinded her sensors, but more importantly, it triggered a human reflex. She tried to wipe her eyes, forgetting that the exoskeleton's hands weren't designed for such delicate movements. The result was Santos literally slapping herself unconscious. 20 seconds. The remaining possessed crew members abandoned their individual approaches and rushed him en masse. Voss grabbed the nearest loose object, a quantum processor housing, and hurled it into their path. The device exploded in a shower of sparks and radiation, temporarily disrupting the entity's control signals. In that moment of chaos, he heard Dr. Okafor's real voice break through. "Commander, I found their source code. It's beautiful and terrible." 10 seconds. The collective entity made one last desperate attempt, using Dr. Okafor's body as a weapon. Neural cables still attached, she lunged toward Graves with inhuman strength. But her human consciousness chose that moment to assert control, and instead of striking him, she grabbed his modified disruptor and pressed it against her own temple. "Do it," she whispered. "Broadcast everything." Graves activated the device. The effect was instantaneous. Every possessed crew member on the ship convulsed as Dr. Okafor's accumulated analysis flooded their neural networks. But this wasn't just data, it was human understanding, complete with emotional context, creative interpretation, and intuitive leaps that no logical system could process. The entities had tried to inhabit human minds without understanding what made them human. Now they were drowning in the very creativity and chaos that defined humanity's consciousness. On the main screen, the bombardment sequence stuttered and failed as the ship's targeting computers received contradictory inputs from the degrading collective intelligence. One by one, the possessed crew members collapsed, their borrowed bodies convulsing as alien and human consciousness fought their final battle. In the same neural space, Dr. Okafor smiled as she fell, blood streaming from her nose. "They wanted to understand us, to use our minds as tools. But consciousness isn't a tool. It's a weapon." Around the bridge, the last of the possessed crew members went still. For a moment, Voss thought they were dead, but then he saw the subtle rise and fall of breathing, the flutter of eyelids beginning to wake. The invasion was over. Humanity's greatest strength, the chaotic, creative, utterly unpredictable nature of human consciousness, had proved incompatible with beings that existed as pure, ordered information. But the victory had come at a terrible cost, and Voss knew the real challenge was just beginning. 3 weeks after the battle, Commander Voss stood in the observation lounge of the medical frigate Asclepius, watching the last of his crew undergo neural rehabilitation. Through the viewport, the ruins of the alien city on Kepler 440 to see glowed faintly in the planet's dawn light, not with malevolent energy now, but with the steady burn of controlled demolition charges. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead Xenop psychologist, set from Earth, reviewed her findings with clinical precision. 27 crew members successfully recovered, though all show signs of what we're calling cognitive scarring, enhanced pattern recognition, accelerated problem-solving abilities, and in some cases, an almost preternatural understanding of information systems. Voss nodded. watching Chief Santos work at a rehabilitation terminal. Her movements were still precise, but human precise now. Not the mechanical efficiency of alien control. And the casualties. Dr. HFY remains in a medically induced coma. The neural feedback from interfacing directly with the entities has left her in what we can only describe as a state of expanded consciousness. She's aware, but experiencing reality on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. We're learning how to help her process that. Through the medical bay's observation window, Voss could see his archaeologists surrounded by monitoring equipment, her brain activity displaying patterns that quantum physicists were still trying to understand. She'd sacrificed her sanity to save humanity, and the debt weighed heavily on him. What about the entities themselves? Dr. Vasquez pulled up a holographic display showing complex quantum mathematics. Completely destabilized, Dr. Graves' viral code, combined with Dr. HFY's psychological analysis, created a cascade failure in their information matrices. They essentially dissolved, became random quantum noise, so they're dead. That's the remarkable part, Commander. We don't think the Murthaki were ever alive in any sense we understand. They were more like aggressive algorithms that achieved something resembling consciousness through pure complexity. When exposed to human thought patterns, true creativity, emotional nuance, intuitive leaps that rigid logical structures couldn't adapt, they collapsed under the weight of processing human consciousness. Voss moved to another viewport, where the Harbinger's edge hung in space, undergoing complete reconstruction. The ship's AI had been purged and rebuilt from the ground up, but somehow, he doubted he'd ever feel comfortable commanding her again. There's something else, Dr. Vasquez continued. The recovered crew members. They've retained some interesting capabilities, enhanced pattern recognition, improved multitasking, accelerated learning. It's as if exposure to the entity's information processing methods has upgraded their neural efficiency, upgraded how, see for yourself. She led him to the rehabilitation bay, where Chief Blackthorn was working on what appeared to be a standard engineering puzzle. But as Voss watched, the man's cybernetic arms moved with impossible precision, interfacing directly with quantum-level circuitry, while his human mind processed multiple data streams simultaneously. Torrin, Voss called out. Blackthorn looked up, and for a moment, Voss saw something alien in his eyes, not malevolent, but vast, as if the man was seeing through layers of reality invisible to normal perception. Commander, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. I can feel the ship's systems, understand their quantum signatures. It's like I've been given new senses. I know exactly how every circuit works, can predict failures before they happen. Are you still? You, Blackthorn smiled. And this time it was purely human, more than before. Actually, the entities tried to override us. But human consciousness is too chaotic to fully control. Instead, we absorbed parts of their processing capabilities. We're still human, just enhanced. Dr. Graves appeared at his shoulder, looking exhausted but oddly satisfied. The final medical reports are fascinating. Exposure to the Murthaki has triggered evolutionary leaps in human neural development, not just in the possessed crew members, but in anyone who had extended contact with them. Even you, Commander, show enhanced pattern recognition and strategic thinking. Voss considered this. So humanity's first contact with hostile aliens made us smarter, made us more than we were. Graves corrected. The entities thought they could use our brains as simple storage devices. They didn't understand that human consciousness isn't passive, it's aggressive, adaptive, evolutionary. When they tried to control us, we evolved beyond their ability to comprehend. A chime from the communications console interrupted them. The face of Admiral Chen appeared on the holographic display, her expression grave. Commander Voss, we've analyzed the quantum signatures you transmitted. Similar energy patterns have been detected at 17 other locations throughout the galaxy, all sites of dead civilizations. Voss felt his blood chill. More Murthaki? We believe so. The pattern suggests they're nomadic, moving from system to system, consuming sapient species until they exhaust local resources. Earth appears to be their next target. Admiral, my crew isn't ready for. Your crew is exactly what we need, Commander. They've developed resistance to possession and retained alien processing capabilities. They're the only humans we know who can fight these things effectively. Voss looked around the medical bay at his recovering crew. No longer entirely human, but more human than they'd ever been before. Each one had stared into the abyss of alien consciousness and emerged transformed, carrying weapons forged from the very experience that had nearly destroyed them. How long do we have? 6 months before the nearest Murthaki cluster reaches the outer system. But there's more. The quantum analysis suggests they're not just individual entities anymore. They're learning, adapting, becoming more complex. The ones heading for Earth have processed the experiences of the ones you defeated. Dr. Okafor's voice drifted from the medical bay, speaking in mathematical equations that somehow conveyed emotional meaning. They come as teachers now, not conquerors. They seek to understand what we are, what we became when we touched their consciousness. But understanding and survival are not the same thing. Voss made his decision. Admiral, request permission to refit the Harbinger's Edge for deep space. Interdiction, if the Murthaki want to study humanity, they can do it on our terms. Granted. Commander, the entire species is counting on you. As the transmission ended, Voss looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in that vast darkness, ancient intelligences were adapting, learning, preparing for humanity's next lesson in survival. But humanity had learned something to that. Consciousness wasn't just awareness, but warfare. Every human mind was a weapon evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. The Murthaki had tried to possess human souls and discovered that human souls possessed them back. Now, enhanced by alien processing power, but driven by human creativity and determination. Voss's crew represented something new in the galaxy, warriors who fought not just with weapons, but with the very essence of what made them human. Chief Blackthorn approached, his cybernetic arms interfacing with quantum processors as naturally as breathing. Ships ready, Commander, and sir, I can feel them out there, the ones coming for Earth. They're afraid now. They've never encountered a species that can absorb their abilities and remain themselves. Good, Voss replied, watching his enhanced crew prepare for humanity's next evolutionary leap. Fear is something we can work with. In the depths of space, ancient minds that had devoured 1,000 civilizations learned a new emotion, uncertainty. For the first time in their existence, the Murthaki faced prey that had become predator, a species that grew stronger from the very act of being consumed. Humanity had passed its first test in the school of galactic warfare. The final exam was just beginning.